Hello guys, today I'm going to be reading Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson. Chapter 1. He saw the first tree shudder and fall far off in the distance. Then he heard his mother call out in the kitchen window, "Luke, inside, now!" He had never disobeyed the order to hide. Even as a toddler barely able to walk in the backyard's tall grass, he had somehow understood the fear in his mother's voice. But on this day, the day they began taking the woods away, he hesitated. He took one extra breath of fresh air, scented with clover and honeysuckle, and, coming far away, pine smoke. He laid his hoe down gently, and savored one last moment of feeling the warm soil beneath his bare feet. He reminded himself, "I will never be allowed outside again, maybe never again as long as I live." He turned and walked into the house, as silently as a shadow. "Why?" he asked at the supper table that night. It wasn't a common question at the Garner house. There are plenty of hows. How much rain did the backfield get? How's the planting going? Even what's? What did Matthew do with the 5/16 wrench? What's Dad going to do about that busted tire? But why wasn't considered much worth asking. Luke asked again, "Why do you have to sell the woods?" Luke's dad harumphed and paused in the midst of shoveling forkfuls of boiled potatoes into his mouth. "Told you before, we didn't have a choice. Government wanted it. You can't tell the government no." Mother came over and gave Luke's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before turning back to the stove. They had defied the government once, with Luke. That had taken all the defiance they had in them, maybe more. "We would have sold the woods if we didn't have to," she said, ladling out thick tomatoey soup. "The government didn't ask us if we wanted the houses there." She pursed her lips as she slid the bowls onto the table. "But the government's not going to live in the houses," Luke protested. At 12 he knew better, but sometimes still pictured the government as a very big, mean, fat person. They were 3 times taller as an ordinary man, who went around yelling at people, "Not allowed!" and "Stop that!" It was all because of the way his parents and older brothers talked. "Government won't let us plant corn there again. Government's keeping the prices down. Government's not going to like this crop." "Probably some of the people who lived in those houses will be government workers," Mother said. "It'll be all city people." If he'd been allowed, Luke would have gone over to the kitchen window and peered out at the woods, trying for the upteenth time to picture rows and rows of houses where the firs and the maples and oaks stood now, or had stood. Luke knew from a sneak peek right before supper that half the trees were now toppled. Some already lay on the ground, some hung at weird angles from their formerly lonely positions. In the sky, their absence made everything look different, like a fresh haircut exposing a band of untanned skin on the forehead. Even from deep inside the kitchen, Luke could tell that the trees were missing, because everything was more brighter, more open, scarier. "And then, when those people move in, I have to stay away from the windows?" Luke asked, though he knew the answer. The question made Dad explode. He slammed his hand down on the table. "Then you gotta stay away now. Everybody and his brothers going to be tramping around back there to see what's going on, and they see you." He waved his fork violently. Luke wasn't sure what the gesture meant, but he knew it wasn't good. No one had ever told him exactly what would happen if anyone saw him. Death? Death was what happened to the runt pigs who got stepped on by their stronger brothers and sisters. Death was a fly that started buzzing when the swatter hit it. He had a hard time thinking about himself in connection with a smashed fire dead pig hung stiff in the sun. It made his stomach feel funny, even trying. "I don't think it's fair that we have to do Luke's chores now," Luke's brother Mark grumbled. "Can't he go outside some, maybe at night?" Luke waited hopefully for an answer, but Dad just said no, without looking up. "It's not fair," Mark said again. Mark was the second son. The lucky second, Luke thought when he was feeling sorry for himself. Mark was 2 years older than Luke and barely a year younger than Matthew, the oldest. Matthew and Mark were easily recognizable as brothers with their dark hair and chiseled faces. Luke was fairer, smaller boned, softer looking. He often wondered if he'd ever look tougher like them. Somehow he didn't think so. Luke don't do nothing nohow, Matthew jeered. We won't miss his work at all. It's not my fault, Luke protested. I'd help more if Mother laid her hands on his shoulders again. Hush, all of you, she said. Luke will do what he can. He always has. The sound of tires on the gravel driveway came through the open window. Now who? Dad started. Luke knew the rest of the sentence. Who could that be? Why were they bothering him now, his first chance to sit down all day? It was a question Luke always heard at the end of from the other side of a door. Today, skittish because the wood's coming down, he scrambled up faster than usual, dashing for the door to the back of the stairs. He knew without watching that Mother would take his plate from the table and hide it in the cupboard. She would slide his chair back into the corner so it would look like an unneeded spare. In 3 seconds, she would hide all evidence that Luke existed, just in time for the door open and offer a weary smile to the fertilizer salesman or the government inspector or whomever else came to interrupt their supper. I hope you liked the first chapter. It's a very cool book. I'm sorry for the mistakes I've made. I do better reading in my head, but I hope I did okay, and thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.